The number you have dialed has been changed. The new number is... Please note, the new number is...
Welcome to the review today for, well, the atom model or the atom representation. So the first thing I want to do with you is I want to read the directions. Now we are going to do the boron representation. So this is where you can correct your test. Now one thing I do want to caution you is that the retest you're going to do, the retakes you're going to do is not going to be boron. So you're not going to be able to memorize everything, but if you know how to do the gist of it, you should be fine. So let's read the first one. Have the correct number of protons, which is going to be P, electrons, and neutrons on your representation. So I'm going to have to figure out in my representation, where do the protons go? Where do the electrons go? Where do the neutrons? I'm going to have to place the protons, electrons, and neutrons in the correct location. So I have to have the correct numbers. I have to get the correct location. So I can't really do the first one. And I got to think about the second one too. I'm also should read the next one. Include the charges. Put a plus symbol for the positive charges and a minus symbol or a negative symbol for the negative charges. So now I can start to do some of this. And some of you, this is the part that you missed, the P, the E, and the N. You put pluses and minuses in there, but you didn't really explain to me what was what and what was the protons, what was the electrons. You assumed that if you put the pluses where the protons are, you assume that I thought you knew that those were going to be protons, but I can't assume that. Okay, so we have boron. And if you look over here, I took a periodic table and I blew it up a little bit, made it larger. So here's boron, and this is what we see. Now, this is the symbol. That's how I know it's boron. Okay, so the model that you have, it would actually say boron, so you don't have to remember that B is boron. The atom model or the periodic table that we give you in class will say boron. So I found boron. Now you've got this number right here, and you have this number right here. This is the atomic number. Here you have the mass of boron. So first of all, we have to remember, and I always like to use my favorite vegetable, the P. I have to remember that protons, electrons, and the atomic number all equal. That's huge. That'll give me some information. The other thing I need to remember is that the protons plus the neutrons equals the mass. And that's huge as well. So let me start to figure this out. Protons. And I'm going to just do it off to the side. So how many protons is it going to have? Well, if the atomic number is equal to the protons and the electrons, it's going to have 5 for the protons. Okay, so I just have the correct numbers. Okay, so I did that. I have protons. I need to know how many electrons I have. Well, remember, the atomic number, electrons and protons all equal, so I know this is 5. Okay, so I've got that. Now, how many neutrons do I have? Well, P plus N equals the mass. So if I look at this, how many protons do I have? I got 5. Okay. And what's my mass? It's 10.81. I'm going to round that to 11. And this may sound like algebra class, but I'm going to solve it symbolically. This cancels out, so I have N equals, what's 11 minus 5? 6. So I have 6 neutrons. Okay, so I can cross this off. I've done this. Now I haven't put the P and the E and the N on there yet, but I know how many of each I have. So now place the protons, electrons, and the neutrons in their correct locations. Okay, so you're going to have to learn a few things here. First of all, one of the reasons why we add the P plus the N here, the equal to mass number, is because these two contain most of the mass in an element. And these two are found in the nucleus. So I'm going to draw a circle here. I'm going to put my P, and I'm going to put my N here. I'm going to put this is 5. How many neutrons do I have? 6. Yep, so I'm going to put a 6 here. Now, let's change colors. Okay, so place the protons, electrons, and the neutrons in their protons, electrons, neutrons in their correct location. Okay, so I've got the protons done. I've got the neutrons. Now, before I do the electrons, if I read on, include the charges. Okay, I know that. Place the parts of the atoms that go into shells in their correct location. Ah, what goes into shells? Well, if the protons and neutrons go in the nucleus, I'm going to have to put the shells up. Now I'm going to draw my first shell, and I'm going to change colors again. Let's go purple. And I'm going to put an E here. Okay, that's one electron. And I know my first shell only holds 2 electrons. So I have one shell, but that's not enough. I'm going to have to add another one. So I'm going to add another one. I'm going to change colors back. So I have 2 electrons. How many do I need? Well, it's right here. I need 5. Okay, so I'm just going to space them out a little bit. Oops, sorry. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so have the correct number of protons. Okay, I've done that. Place the protons, electrons, and neutrons in their correct location. Okay, I get credit for that. Include the charges. Okay, let me change colors again. Protons, if you think pro, if you're pro something, you're for it. So I'm just going to put a plus sign right here. So that tells me that the protons, okay, I'm done with the protons. I'm going to cross that off. Neutrons have no charge, so I can leave it blank. And the electrons have a negative charge. So I'm just going to go ahead and put, this way I know the teacher's going to see it. I'm going to put negative signs here. Now you might say, well, how are we supposed to know the neutrons are neutral? Well, if you label the protons as positive and the electrons are negative, what's left? The neutrons. Where some of you didn't label one or the other, so then I took 2 points off because I didn't know. Maybe you thought the electrons were neutral. And so were the, I couldn't tell for sure. So you have to be certain. If you label the electrons and the protons, I'm okay with that. Maybe you'll come out here and say N equals, no charge. That way I know for sure. Maybe you'll do that. I'm okay with that. But because you don't have anything on here, I'm also going to assume. So I'm done with this. Now place the parts of the atoms that go into shells in the correct location. I've done that. Label each shell if more than one is needed. Well, let's get another pen again. Let's do a funky color here. It'll kind of be barred shaped. So I know my first shell is the K, and my next shell is the L. So it's K and L. So I've done this. And so for up here, I'd have all 11 points. Notice how I went through each one of these. I crossed stuff off. I checked it. Some of you forgot to do some of these because you never checked it off, even though it says check the boxes as you complete each task. That was to keep you in line and making sure that you do it all the different steps so you didn't lose any points.